Hello, my name is Eric Zelna, and this is my PechaKucha style reflection on my first quarter as an HCDE student, and specifically my experiences in HCDE 518 Session B. Now, even though this program is part of the College of Engineering, I still had this underlying fear that as an engineer I would be this stranger in a room filled with designers and artists and that we would clash over our different philosophies. Now, in reality, this couldn't be further from the truth. Everyone I met seemed to share my fascination with everyone else's uh, diverse backgrounds, and we were all there for the same reason, which was to become a better designer, specifically a human-centered designer. Sarah even touched on this concept when she discussed the concept of little d versus big D designers. And this really helped me understand how I could think of myself as a designer, even if that isn't currently my job title. She also went into some of the applications that the field of industrial engineering has to the field of HCDE, which made me feel right at home as a fellow IE. Another concept that really helped me fit this subject into my reality was the design frameworks we studied. What struck me is the similarities the design frameworks bear to the problem-solving frameworks I know from industrial engineering. Now, they all start with a problem that needs to be solved, and they all take an iterative process that first requires gathering information before a solution or design can be implemented, and they all require following up to verify that the solution effectively addressed the original problem. In the discussion groups, I felt I really had a lot to learn from the experiences of my peers who work more directly in the industry. However, I wish more of them were willing to debate. We are in a field that is largely defined by two dramatically contrasting design ideologies, and there's a lot of things we're not going to agree on. And those places where we disagree is where I feel there's the most to learn. Alas, my yearning for passionate debate would not be satiated by my turn as a discussion leader. My subject was focused on brainstorming, and while I did manage to bring in some of the brainstorming techniques in question to stoke the discussion, I still found myself longing for a bit more debate in my discussion group. Maybe in the future I'll select a more controversial topic for discussion. One of my favorite subjects to discuss was actually on the topic of bad design. One of our early assignments was to identify bad design in the world around us and explain why it was bad and how it could be made better. I feel like there is so much to be learned from seeing things done poorly. It has since become a game for me to pick out bad designs in the world around me. Of course, you can't criticize designs without offering up a few designs of your own. These three sketches were from the initial sketching assignment before I learned that I was spending way too much time on my sketches. I learned a lot from practicing faster sketches to capture a rough idea rather than getting lost in the details, as I am so prone to do. Now, this next quote is just something humorous I found online, but it does absolutely represent my experiences doing group work in my undergraduate studies, and I am oh so relieved that it doesn't even remotely represent my experiences with my project team in this class. Now, even though none of us were big D designers, we still had a really great team from a diverse backgrounds, and I'm really thankful for having had the opportunity to work with them. Now, the project we selected was about designing a better parking meter. Or so I thought. See, we set out to take an existing parking meter design and improve the usability with a strong focus on the actual payment experience. And this mistake was largely mine, as I had previously gone on this diatribe about the inanity of a payment experience that requires you to input your card before you know the price of what you're paying for. And the lesson I had to learn there is the often quoted, "You are not the user." This is a novel concept to me, though apparently it is a popular one. See, the mistake we made was to specify our target users as a population of people that happened to include ourselves, which led us straight into this pitfall because our users didn't actually care about the payment part of the process at all. What the users cared about was finding an actual available legal parking spot in the first place. And our job is to improve the user's experience. The users we met in our field studies were focused on trying to interpret the myriad of signs to figure out where they could actually park. To make the users happy, we had to focus on the user's priorities. So one of the ways of doing that was by developing personas. Initially, I scoffed at the idea of using personas because it seemed like a gross oversimplification of the type of demographic information that could be better represented statistically. However, our different personas did highlight the fact that our users are entering our solution space in two different ways, either via a navigation app or by self-navigating, and that really expanded the problem that we need to solve. The first of my sketches here is basically just taking a typical parking meter and adding a couple of lights onto the top. But as we kept iterating and drawing more and more designs, we came up with this concept of the parking pillar. The design, while unconventional, still clearly illustrated its own purpose, which might seem like an unlikely assertion, but it was actually supported by our tests of the prototype. And I was utterly amazed to learn that you could do so many different kinds of user experience tests with a paper prototype. I was certainly aware that low fidelity prototypes existed, but it never occurred to me just how low they could go. the idea that we could get meaningful feedback using a paper prototype was never something I expected. Now, even so, I still had a really hard time letting go of the idea that I shouldn't be going into the usability testing with a fully functioning prototype. My team had to keep reminding me that we would learn just as much from a paper prototype, which was true since the real utility of our design came from having many of them to distinguish between, which would have meant I would have had to build many physical prototypes, which would have been expensive and exhausting. Susan Mings probably would have agreed that I was getting ahead of myself, as she raised a really interesting point about where she gets her most useful user data, and it was simply from finding 4 people and asking them 5 important questions. And at this point in our design process, we still had much to learn from those simpler forms of investigation. Susan, of course, was not our only guest lecturer. We also heard from William Vong, Sally Barton, and Lada Gorlenko mentioned a quote from her father that really stuck with me, and I think it's an apt summary of both HCDE and industrial engineering. She said, "We sell common sense, it's worth a lot." So many of the things I do seem like very simple common sense, and yet they bring such value. Recognizing the former yourself seems essential to getting others to recognizing the latter. I also had a lot to learn from my classmates. I learned that designers make some really impressive presentations, they make creative use of backgrounds, impressive art, custom themes, they take minimalism to the extreme with lowercase letters, they apply UCD to their presentation design, and I learned that this slide has too much text on it and it doesn't have enough pictures. As an industrial engineer at Boeing, I've certainly encountered my fair share of usability problems, and in particular, I want to help develop the next generation of manufacturing execution systems with an enhanced focus on usability in order to increase employee satisfaction and productivity. Now, the lessons I learned in this course are an exciting first step on that journey. So I'll see you next time.